Okay, it is 7:01, and at this time I'd like to call to order the Tewksbury Finance Committee meeting for Monday, February 14th, 2022. We're going to continue our budget reviews. I believe we're going to start with the Regional Emergency Communications Center. Is that correct?
That's correct. You want to pull up that PowerPoint?
Okay, yeah, I can share that. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Share. Every time it does that. Go. Okay, can you see that?
Yep. Yep.
All right. Go to the next one. Go.
Okay, thank you very much. So you guys can see that just fine. So I just, as the director of the regional, I just wanted to provide everybody with an update on some major milestones, some call statistics, and other things that just have been going on at the Northern Middlesex Regional in the year 2021. I think it's just important to show just a few of the things that are noteworthy. There's many more than that have, of course, occurred, but I'll just be very brief on this. Back in 2021, we had a few calls that gained some recognition of the staff and the job that they do, but one in particular kind of rose to the occasion here. We received national media coverage on this in a couple of different avenues, print, web, and got some government, some interest in a couple of different avenues. One of our dispatchers took a call of a young boy that was found not breathing, had drowned or was in the process of drowning in a pool in the town. It was found by family members, and they began safety efforts. But smartly, one of the family members called 911, activated that service, and we started doing everything that we could to assist them, get responders on location, identify the issues, and basically do the professional assistance that we can provide with emergency medical dispatch. And in this case, successful CPR was given. The child was revived, and it was a good outcome. In fact, the family came to visit us just a few days later while still in town, and was very excited to report that all was well. And again, it's just an exciting thing to see the staff go through something like that. It brings everyone together, but it also shows that the system works and that we're doing very well with that. We also celebrated 1 year of operation, moving the Tewksbury Police and Fire operation into the regional on September 1st of 2020. We celebrated that on 9/1/2021. We also applied for 4 separate state 911 grants under the EOPS program. Those funds, as we can get into further tonight, and you'll hear some more later, assist us with the assessment and transition costs through the development grant, which put this center together. The training grant, which is available for any PSAP and rec in the state to further continuing education, software, and other programs in the center. Support and incentive, which is extensively used for salary costs and reimbursements for those. And then also our EMD program, which I just discussed a moment ago. And we also began to get more active and get up and running our social media accounts. Just again, trying to obtain the goal of adding a community or communities into the center, showing what we can do, showing the types of work that goes on in here and the people that work here, and then also help with recruitment efforts and other avenues like that that will really help us get our name on the map a little bit more. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So just wanted to cover just up to date as of February 2022, what our staffing levels are. Myself as the executive director. We have an administrative assistant. We do have 4 dispatch supervisors split into 4 different shifts. We have 6, about to be this week, 7 full-time dispatchers with a return of 1 dispatcher who left kind of temporarily for an outside employment and is returning full-time. 3 dispatch trainees that we have in progress right now, and then we will hire an additional few dispatchers by the end of March 2022 to get us back and really running in a good sense of operation staffing wise. We also have 6 part-time or reserve dispatchers that have either come in fresh and learned the system and been trained, or have left us from full-time employment to go into police or fire services in the town or in other towns around us. All set with that one.
Okay.
Thank you. And then just a new system that we were able to put into place for 2021 to capture the whole year was through our phone system called TPX. This phone system allowed us to capture how many incoming calls come into the center. It was about 71,000 of those in the year. And then as a result of that call coming in, we have to usually make other calls to other departments or other agencies. And there was about 43,000 of those for a total of 114,513 calls, or an average of 313 per day. And that does not include our 911 call volume. So it's a pretty significant amount of work that averages out throughout the year. And then just the next slide. Yes, thank you. So this is our 911 call volume for 2021. 16,586 calls came in. This includes our 911 wireline, wireless, and text to 911 calls that are directly received in the center. They are not transferred in from other centers per se. Very few are still. And this is calls that we are taking directly at the Northern Middlesex Regional. That was an increase, or 28% more than the year prior, between the town of Tewksbury, the town of Dracut, and then the few months that we were combined from September through December of 2020. So this is a pretty significant increase. 46% of all those calls were all either wireless devices, and maybe another 4% were derived from internet phones or VoIP phones or VoIP lines that people don't have a physical landline in their home or business for. We also conducted a wireless phase 1 trial, which our terminology basically just means cell phones that come in via wireless devices that come in directly through older technology, older phones and other systems, so that we get those calls directly rather than transfers from some of these still existing state 911 wireless PSAPs. So that also enhances our grant requirements and makes sure that we're meeting those guidelines, but also provides us, as we just discovered with the latest grants for FY23, some more call volume and a better allocation of the support costs to run the center and to increase some funds coming in and revenue to the into the center. And just the last is just a chart just to show a quick comparison from NEMREC with those 16,000 or so calls to the county, to the rest of Middlesex County. And it just shows that we took about 5,500 more calls than most other cities and towns within Middlesex County, operating as the regional. So it's a pretty significant increase over others. It's not the biggest I've seen, but certainly pretty big for just 2 communities at this time. So any questions from the board or anyone that had anything further to add?
I'll open it up. Anybody have any questions on the presentation? Then we'll go through the budget.
If it's okay, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I love statistics. Thank you for putting so much in there. I was curious about abandoned calls or calls that may not be actual emergencies. I can't really tell from this chart. I mean, it looks like the 911 calls are the big green bars and then some abandoned, but the other categories don't look like there's anything for them. Maybe that's just the case. They're not represented because they don't exist.
The way that this chart, which was, I can get more detailed and get that to you, is from a program the State 911 Department gives to all PSAPs and regionals in the state called ECATS, at no cost to us. It's just part of the system, and you can get into more specifics on abandons and the exact numbers. The admin lines and 10-digit lines are just there for basically inter-PSAP communications. We don't really get a lot of calls there, luckily, anymore, as a lot of people are just trying to call 911 for assistance. The abandons are there. We do receive approximately 2,000 of those. It's included in the totals, but we get about, I would say, a good 1/6 of our calls are abandoned in some way. They don't necessarily always mean that they were no emergency or that there wasn't a problem. Some of those do turn into legitimate calls for service or emergencies, such as domestic violence calls, car accidents, medical emergencies. So we have a policy where all those calls are still sent in, entered into the system, responded to, or some other sort of policy that we have that covers all the possible avenues of that.
And do you track calls that came in as 911 calls, but then you determine they're not really an emergency?
It's a little bit harder to do that, but what we do try to identify is every call that comes in that is identified as some sort of call for service gets put into our CAD system. And so there's very few that really come in with nothing being logged in as not being, definitive in one category of another. We just have tried to keep up as best we can with logging the calls just to make sure that we have a record of, who called about what. But, if you stay on the line and you called accidentally and we speak to a capable and, someone that can understand what's happening, then in some cases we do not send something out, but we just mark it as a call for service that was taken.
Oh, that's helpful. I was just curious. Sometimes you hear in the news about 911 being abused. I was just curious, in a regional center, are you seeing any of that? And it sounds like if it is, it's just very minimal.
Yeah, it is minimal, but we do still receive some. We have a couple locations, both in town and in Drake, that we get frequent calls from where we try to identify what the issues are, work with the police departments mostly to identify the responsible owners of those properties, just as if you have police cruisers and fire trucks going to businesses repeatedly for alarms. We could try to identify those and work with them so we don't drain our resources, taking those calls when there's really no emergency there. But we do work with the other departments to try to reduce that entirely.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else questions on the presentation before we get?
Yes, I have two questions. 911 versus 911 abandoned. I'm going to play two scenarios. Elderly person has one of those lifeline things, accidentally sets it off for whatever reason. The lifeline place calls you guys, I assume, and then the phone at the elderly person's house goes off and says, "Mary, are you all right?" And Mary says, "Yes, I just accidentally pressed the button." Where does that fall?
So we typically, I'd say probably 9 out of 10 times when we get those calls to Lifeline, they actually don't come in via a 911 system. They come in via the business lines, those calls I provided to you at the beginning, because the alarm companies and those systems have numbers programmed for each PSAP that they're registered to. So, Mary calls from North Street and she hit her her button and it calls the service. We get a call from them informing them what they have. They very, very rarely come in on our 911 system because it's not them physically calling from Tewksbury or Drake. It's them coming into a call center, and we receive that call and determine where to go and what to do from there. So we do on occasion get 911 calls from automated systems, but it's actually more rare than common.
Okay, but so it would come in on a different number. So where would it fall on the graph, I guess? What kind of call would it be?
So for those types of calls, we would send out a police and fire response, and we could get you some specific call statistics from our CAD system that indicate how many we went to in a given period. I would say those are still, I really wouldn't be able to put a number on it right now. I want to guess it, but it's not as much as what you think it might be. It's less common than anything. If we get a call for someone reporting something like that and it was emergency, it's just a medical response, and we use our EMD triage and send police and fire to assist and evaluate. And then if it's just truly an accidental call, it really just gets logged in our CAD as an accidental reporting, if anything.
And so the other question I have, you talked about wireless calls from wireless phones versus landlines. Does that cause us any delay in response time?
I would say probably not, because we're receiving more and more of wireless calls, and because of the rec being established as opposed to single PSAPs, like as before with Tewksbury Police and Fire and Dracut Police and Dracut Fire. We're trying to identify and obtain those calls directly into us. And, that call doesn't have to go to a 911 regional center, such as the one that's in this county in North Shore, 911, formerly known as Essex Regional. They no longer get the majority of those calls. They still will get some, just because of the way that the system is set up with carriers. It's mostly the telecommunications companies and the towers that the calls hit that determines who specifically will get it. But if a call comes in for a tower right off of Whipple Road, more than likely that call will come to us and not to our surrounding towns or the regional.
You read my mind. So if I called 911 from my cell phone here, where I live in Tewksbury, you'd know it would automatically go to you.
It's supposed to go to us. That's the best answer I can give you. They are still in 2022 identifying with the carriers to better locate and triangulate callers. And with the advent of all this new technology with like Uber and other apps that are out there that can really get you precise location, we have a new system called Rapid SOS. It's free to us to use, where we actually see those calls come in and we can better identify locations in addition to what 911 can give us. So there's really a lot of programs out there and technology that keeps changing that almost guarantees that the call will come to here at the regional, as opposed to the surrounding towns. But there are still times when they, just due to the carrier and the limitations of the technology of the call that was placed, or how busy it is at the time with usage, it can still go to a bordering town. But the transfer time back is very fast.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Russo, did you have a question or?
Yeah, no, I did. Just in terms of, I just want to make sure I understood. So on this slide right here, we're showing the 911 call volume, but on the slide prior, you referenced something much greater in terms of numbers. So I just, oh, I see. It's the 16.5. So that's what you're showing on the chart in the next slide, correct?
Correct. Yeah, just a visual representation, but it also included some additional data about just where we are compared to the rest of the county. And that includes all other regionals that are in the county. They averaged it out and just provided us how many calls on average we receive compared to them. So, it does include both towns in here, of course, but a significant amount of those compared to the rest. It's higher even with the abandons in the rest of the county.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. Yeah, I had a few more questions with the budget, but we'll get into that momentarily, I suppose.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else on the presentation? Okay, let's move along to the budget. Let's see. Try to find it here. That's it. Yeah. You see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Richard, was there anything in particular you want to start off, or me just go right into it?
Yeah, I think you could just go into a meeting and, the general terms, talk about the salary and any major changes to operating, and then the committee will have some questions.
Okay, great. All right, so yeah, this is just the budget summary page. The salaries for 2023 requested just reflect the changes that we've had with some of our staff. We have, seen some over, turning over of staff, some holdovers from the Tewksbury Center. Some have retired. Others are still here, and we have seen the need to just reflect, where we're at in terms of anticipated costs and competition with other centers of similar size to us. The temporary part-time salary is again for our reserve dispatchers, those that we come in at lower rates than full-time, not significantly less. Usually they're very similar, if not the exact same amount. But they work less hours because they're here, on a part-time basis or as needed for shifts. So we see a good amount of savings there, but we've used more of that as we've gotten through our now second year of operation and seen that. We've also faced, due to those staffing challenges and some shortages, a good amount of overtime to cover all shifts and to also ensure that supervisors who do work the floor and work in the room are able to still perform their functions, do some administrative work, and also cover those. Our uniforms, that line item also shows an increase to cover our reserve dispatchers that do come in here, and we do want to wear the uniform that we do wear, provide them with some funds to do that, and then also the full-time staff to wear their uniforms as well. In terms of operating the column there, obviously we'll get into the breakdown of these more specifically, but we've obviously have a little bit more time now and on our experience under our belt to establish those ongoing operating costs, including energy utilities, seeing how that evens out or how that increases. We try to stay level funded in as much of these categories as we could. Identified some areas from last year where we learned we didn't need as much and are trying to, again, use grants as to the best of our ability to cover these items where it's applicable. And also just stay on top of staff development and other supplies and computer equipment that is needed as we get further into the operation from when the development grant purchased the majority of the equipment costs as we started and opened and built the center out. And then just down below in the unclassified is our the group insurance rates, Middlesex Retirement, Medicare, OPEB, property liability insurance through Maya, and our occupational health to go through that. Because it's still available for the 2023 year, we are requesting the same amount of staff except for one additional dispatcher, where we're looking to add someone to cover a shortcoming that we've identified, and that's through the use of the supervisors being included in the staffing. They are still unable to truly get enough hours in a month to get all their administrative duties done. And this dispatcher, because they're so busy during the 8 to 4 and 4 to midnight shift, would come in and be able to identify the busiest hours of the day where our biggest call volume is, and the hours that we can show on our reports are the busiest times and just most active, and we'll be able to get the supervisors to be able to supervise more directly, hands-on approach, and also get some administrative duties done with enough dispatchers in the room to take the load down a little bit. So we are asking for that in the salary to accommodate that. And I think just down below, a little bit further down, and scroll, just this is where our assessments will break out for FY23 for the towns, and additionally where we're the revenue coming in from the support grants. We did see an increase in the support incentive grant due to those wireless call volume increases. A couple of test trials that we did that we now are adopting for 2022 and will take effect in fiscal 23 starting July 1st. So we can see some increases there with that call volume for FY23.
All right, thank you. I'll go around. Mr. Lavassiere, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So you talked about turnover. Where are we losing people to?
So the exact count at this point, with one returning literally this week, they've all gone to police or fire departments, either in the state or even in the town. So these are staff members that either were here, held over from the town, that were reserves before or we're full-time dispatchers and we're brand new, and they've decided to pursue their opportunity to become police officers, in one case, a firefighter. So that's where the majority have left. There was one that started with us brand new in 2020 when we opened the center, and just determined that after a year, the hours and the schedule weren't for her, and she left 911 entirely. But everyone else has gone to police and fire, which is kind of an expectation in the first year. But we were hit suddenly with just a few at the same time within the first month within the first month of 2022 is when it really took effect. And then additionally, we did lose one of the senior supervisors, the senior supervisor, to retirement just a few weeks ago.
So the expectation is that the trend to move up in a firefighter or EMT role will continue.
So the way that we've gone about our recruitment efforts is to obviously not advocate for that, but also not turn away people just because they have, an interest in the future of working towards a goal that they might have. And, the job in the career path for dispatchers in the past has always been, well, it's just a stepping stone. It's the first job you get if you want to become a police or firefighter. But that is not the case industry-wide anymore. We are trying to, not only here at the NEMREC, but across the state and the country, there's an agenda to try to professionalize this position and create career opportunities. And I think some of the staff that we've hired more recently have identified that they have no interest in that. We might have one or two that could still go down that path and change their mind, but as you turn over and hire more people, you kind of notice, and we're seeing the possibility that this will not just continue to happen, that this was the hard hump that we had to cross over, and we should be over it very soon.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bishop, any questions on this one?
Nope, no questions.
Okay. Mr. Christian,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Asaborian?
Thank you. Just following up on that turnover, because I was going to kind of pry into that too. You answered most of it. I'm just curious, is there kind of an industry standard for how long does a dispatcher typically stay in that role?
So industry-wide, the National Emergency Number Association and APCO, the Association of Public Safety Officials, I belong to both as a director here, but I've been a longstanding member of those organizations. We really have tried to identify what those numbers are and do our best to try to reduce those and offer a lot of different outreach and programs to see what we can do about that. It's a major issue in addition to just general staffing issues and hiring with everything after COVID. But the turnover rate in 911, just because of honestly the rate of pay, sometimes it has to do with the fact that people have always foreseen dispatch as not recognized as much as the other first responder groups. They don't really put a number on it per se exactly, but the latest that I saw for 2020 was a turnover rate of about 35 to 40%, just due to the burnout of the calls, the high stress environment, or the opportunity to pursue other career paths such as police and fire. And then the third tier, I guess, concern is the rate of pay, just compared to those other positions or other government positions that are available to them.
That's interesting. I actually expected to hear you say a higher rate, because when you're picking up nothing but emergency calls, humans in their worst condition, that is very stressful and burnout. So I kind of expected a number even higher. My next question, and it may actually be to Richard, your computer assets, who manages those? Is that through the town, Richard, or is that through another contract?
Really a combination. Delphi, who does the police department, is mainly responsible for the computer equipment and computer assets, and Jamie does help out, especially with the networking part.
So it's a combination. That makes
It is.
complete sense. And my final question is, I think this is a very successful implementation of a regional call center. Are we able to market it for other communities to try and join in, share the costs?
So the answer is yes. We have reached out to probably most, if not all, of the towns that border Tewksbury to see if there's any interest. There just hasn't been any interest from them at this time. There have been other communities that are a little further away that have shown interest, but never really have pulled the trigger to join. A lot of it is because it's just a, no one wants to make that big of a change. Police and fire chiefs in other communities may not want to lose control. They see coming to a region, they may lose control over that operation and service. When we tried to convince Chelmsford to come over, there was a concern about the quality of service they would get. So State 911 did offer they would pay for the assessment of each of the communities that are in a regional center for 3 years as an incentive to join. But that still didn't push anybody our way. We do have a community that may be looking at it right now. They're looking to join a regional, that they're kind of investigating it, but we just can't seem to convince anybody. The police chief, fire chief, and Kevin, when they go to their association meetings, they constantly talk to people, but nothing yet.
Well, maybe the longer we're in operation and demonstrating how well it works. But thank you. That's all the questions I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Russo.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, just a couple questions that I was jotting down here. So I know it's obviously new within the last couple of years, but what is driving the grant? Is it because it's a new center? Is it will those continue to grow with the call center as the years go on, or are you seeing that tied to more because it's a new center?
Yeah, so just briefly on the grants. So no matter how long we're in operation, we will always see until they make a major announcement, which we would all have to across the state be prepared for. But as long as the 911 surcharge still comes in, and that is legislated at this time, that's not at the will of administrations. So that's legislatively there, and that would mean that the state 911 department through EOPS distributes those formulas based on population, so census population, which they use for 2020 census, and then the call volume or the exact call volume for those communities for that year prior. So those numbers will usually stay the same, or they will, in most cases, increase as that goes up. So those will stay the same or increase. They've had also a policy where that if somehow your call volume drops down or your population had a significant hit, then those monies would typically go down and decrease, but they've made a decision to use other grant funds to keep those level funded for those communities that were affected by that. What will change in more of the immediate future is those assessments as part of the development grant with a new center for the two towns will start to decrease down to eventually zero. Richard, we still have this fiscal year coming up with 100%, correct?
Yes, this will be the last fiscal FY23 will be the last year. And, I spoke to the state 911 director today. They are extremely supportive of what we're doing to the point of not only are they, I anticipate continued funding in the future, but even for this current year, he said, if there's anything you need this year, let us know. We'll help you out. Just let us know. Us being successful is important to them because their goal is to reduce the number of communities that have standalone dispatch and push as many as they can into regional dispatch. I see these grants continuing well into the future.
And then I noticed from FY22, to FY23, I think if I got this right, if I'm looking at it correctly, FY22, there was 12 dispatchers and 4 supervisors. Again, I know that you said that there was obviously some turnover issues in FY21. And then in FY23, you go up to 13 dispatchers and 4 supervisors. So I think an add of 1. But you had referenced in your PowerPoint that there was a 28% increase in calls. So I sort of, just try to compare apples to apples, 28% in increase in calls, so obviously the volume is growing, and I would expect that, at some point it has to level off, I would imagine, with population metrics, et cetera. But, with the 28% increase in only 1 added head, does that make sense? Is that reasonable? It's hard for me to sort of gain. I'm just trying to ask the questions as I'm seeing it here based on the information.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I don't actually anticipate that next year or this year, 2022 calendar year, but for fiscal 23, that we'll see any kind of major changeover than what we saw here.
Okay.
We just happened to have a really busy year. COVID did not slow calls down. In fact, it just increased because so many more people are at home or at businesses or other places when they're not on the road as much. So, there's just definitely been a difference in what we saw from the 2 towns when they were separated before, and then obviously just the few months of 2020 where we were in operation once we had the staffing to run it. I will say that we will keep a close eye on that, and Richard and everyone's been very supportive of making things adjusted where we need to, but the use of reserves has really kind of saved us, and we hope to increase that going forward, as was done previously at Tewksbury Police and Fire. Just giving trained staff the ability to come in and assist, especially with the experience that they've had, or in this case, looking to add this other dispatcher to identify what we need to do during the day, on the busiest hours of the day, whether it be noon to 8 or 11 to 7, or whatever we come up with, where we could add this person to really fill in those busy shifts and get our operation in a better, smoother setting. But we will obviously need to take another closer look as part of that discussion with another community that will eventually come in and join, in where we would just meet that staffing level to make sure we could handle all that. That would be part of the requirements of taking another town in.
Okay, understood. And then just the final question, sort of smaller point, I guess. I noticed that one of the things sort of in the computer budget was for a server replacement. So with it being a new center and everything, I would have, is this a hand-me-down server that was given to the center to start with then, or? And we're already
Yeah, so the way that these servers really work, and this is just a request that was more recent too from Delphi, they tried to identify the equipment that was purchased in 2019 from these companies such as SHI, they're the provider of the equipment, and it was purchased in 2019, end of 2019 into 2020, installed and ready to go in 2020, and then in operation 2020, 2021, 2022. But as you start to use all of the different servers, they recommend a replacement and or kind of a spare as of this year, based on their schedule, what they've done at other centers. So that would be actually purchased in 2023 and implemented closer to the end of the fiscal year, so that equipment is one at a time replaced. They are top of the line HP or Azure servers, but it's actually really, you want it on site so that it's not all in the cloud, so that you can have everything run without needing to go to a backup or leave the center. We never really want to do that. So that's what that's for.
Understood. Okay. I appreciate your answers, Kevin. Thank you very much for the information.
Of course.
Okay. So along those lines you were just talking about, was that part of your priority 3, where it talks about your document, that listed, your priorities about tech equipment and requiring spare equipment and that sort of thing? Is that?
Yeah, I would include that in priority 3 at this point. Yes. That specific item was something that we had heard something about from when we had a combined operations chiefs meeting with myself, and we brought in Delphi. We had that in November, where we identified most of the items. But then they take a closer look as we get closer to this process, and they identified we should really get that in there so that we can purchase it in 2023. And again, because the lead times also for equipment like this, with all the shipping delays and real COVID impacts, we don't want to be stuck with something where we can't get a replacement, or if something does fail, it's harder to get something up and running to keep us really flowing smoothly. So it is not essential. We can live without it for this fiscal year, but it was something that our IT partners identified that we should look towards requesting.
Okay, and so also, so does that fulfill your priority 3, or were there more things that you wanted that aren't in the budget?
Not to my knowledge that we didn't cover today.
Okay.
Is that right, Richard?
Correct. Kevin and I did one more review of the budget before I sent it to the finance committee, and we added everything in that we felt was needed, including any priorities that Kevin had.
Okay, great. So I guess that might answer my question about priority 1, which asked for 25,000 overtime, which I see in the budget is increased from last year. So that priority was met as well, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I think we met everything. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions. You answered the question about the grants I was going to ask.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah. Yes.
I have one question. If you could just
Sure.
scroll down a little bit to where it says percentages.
Yeah. Down here. Yeah.
If we got a new town in, would that town only get the 100% coverage for 3 years, or would it be spread amongst?
That's how we get it for 3 years, since we will have received our assessment for 3 years.
Wishful thinking. I'm just trying to.
But
Okay.
what that will do, it will help reduce our assessment, because now certain costs will be spread over 3 towns.
Okay, and the assessment, I'm assuming it's based on population?
Now, the assessment's based on, when we originally did the study, was based on call volume per town.
Okay. Oh, it's pretty close.
It is close.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add real fast to that, if you do bring in a third community, which is something we're trying to obviously work on still, but the formula that I spoke of earlier about that support and incentive cost actually increases a good amount for towns that have, or I should say regionals that have 3 or more communities or towns in them as members. Obviously, they would see that 100% for 3 years directly to them for their assessment portion. But we would also see an increase in the percentage of the support incentive costs because we have 3 or more towns. This center is not built to be one of the ones that have, I think the number was like 6 or 7 towns or more. That those are the big hitter, large facilities. So we won't get to that, but 3 to 7 towns, I believe it is, you see a different and higher percentage of revenue that would come in on a yearly basis in the grants. So that would be a significant reason to have another town come in, which we're hopeful that we can see in the next year.
All right. Thank you for that info. And unless anybody else has any other questions, I think that'll do it. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll jump to fire.
Okay. Welcome, Chief Kearns. Let's see if I can pull that up.
Well, as you're bringing that up, Rod, unfortunately, I'm not quite as technology savvy as Kevin. I don't have a PowerPoint for you or anything like that. But on a serious note, they're doing a great job over there. It's a great partnership that we have with them. What people forget is it's just barely over a year old. You know, so it's a work in progress. It's going well. Kevin's doing a great job over there, and I just want to acknowledge the work that the dispatchers in that center are doing for this town and for Drake.
Great. That's good to hear.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. So for my budget, just real quick on a recap of where our department is right now. some of the information I sent to you, 2021 showed quite a bit of turnover for us. We've hired 9 brand new firefighters. Myself took over as chief, 3 captains, 5 lieutenants out of 12 lieutenants. So we've had quite a bit of turnover. It's been a great transition. Just recently, the deputy chief retired, so there'll be new deputy chief. Paul Gadagaro is taking over in that position. But overall, this department is doing outstanding. The senior guys have done a phenomenal job training and mentoring new employees that we have in our department. And I believe the service we're offering the town is second to none. And it's a credit to the guys working every day here. So as far as the budget goes, you'll see it's about $128,000 increase from last year. 122, almost 123,000 of that is for salaries, which is all those new guys we hired last year going up to another step, and also contractual obligations for a cost of living increase. So that's that covers 123,000 of that. Regular salaries is 103 of that, and then overtime actually decreased because of all the guys that we have going to the academy right now. We have 3 graduating in a couple of weeks, then 4 more will be heading out. So once I get through all of them, we can finally get back up to 13-man staffing where we were before, and that gives us an extra man on every shift. So if someone's out, we don't have to replace them that shift. One of the big increases you'll see is terminal leave. We do have a most senior firefighter, captain, is going to be retiring next year. He's the last one that's has unlimited terminal leave. Mr. Montori had negotiated that out early on, so that's a fairly big number that he has, but that's where the salaries increase exists. Operating increase is very minimal, about $5,300, $5,400. You'll notice we increase utilities again as we get ready to move to the new station, hopefully the next month or so. That number is still unknown. We don't know what the cost is truly going to be to for electricity and to heat the building and to cool the building. On the operating, also uniforms, you'll see a decrease again. We had to up that last year for the number of new hires we had to turnout gear for them, their coats and their pants. That's approximately $3,200 a set. So we got all that purchased. So moving forward, we're able to adjust that number down. This year, there is no grant. You'll see there's no grant match. With Deputy Gadagaro taking over, and also there was 3 other members that have stepped up that want to pursue grants. So this coming year, we are pursuing more grants. We're going to try to, between the federal government and the state government, we just received money from the state, about $16,000 to purchase some equipment. The federal grant we put in for this year is mainly to do with training. But going in the future, it's, these guys stepping up to handle the grants is going to be a huge help to me. So, like I said, at the end of the day, the budget's going up just over $128,000 for the coming year. I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that you guys might have.
All right, thank you for that. And thank you for all the info that you provided. A lot of numbers to look through.
Yeah.
All right, let's go around. Mr. Lavasier?
Chief, thank you for all you and your team do, first off. Secondly, thank you for the word narrative. Found that very useful while going through this. I had a question about knock boxes.
Yep.
Are they are they Massachusetts mandated now, like all new buildings that they have them?
I'm not sure what the actual requirement is, Rich. I know the Fire Prevention Officer, Lieutenant Zawicki, has been doing it. I believe it is on all new buildings. Not the way we put it to any new building that's opening up, Rich, is they're crazy if they don't make that investment. Just for a clarification for anyone that it isn't aware of, the Knox boxes is a metal box that attaches to the building itself, and we can put the keys for the building into that box. And the only people that have a key for that box is the fire department. No one else has a key for it, and each town is assigned a separate key. So I couldn't take my key and go up to Lowell or Wilmington and open up their Knox box. So it's a way for us to be able to get in the building without doing damage to the building, when no one's there late at night. But to answer your question, Rich, I can find out for sure, but I'm not 100% positive on the code for that.
Okay, and with the move over to the new fire station happening very, very shortly, which is great. Are we bringing any equipment over from that old building?
Yeah. So we're bringing the
trucks, hoses, all that.
Yeah, so obviously all the apparatus we're bringing over, but also the SCBA filling machine. That's how we fill our air tanks. That's coming over with us. We already had purchased a new gear washer and dryer extractor. We didn't have room in this building for it, but it was being held at the senior center, so that's being sent over there. So really, there isn't too much we're taking with us, but one of the bigger things is the SCBA filling machine, because that's probably about a $70,000 item.
Okay, so we're maximizing what we can bring over. We're not.
Absolutely. Yep. Whatever we feel that we can still utilize, certainly take with us and still use it.
Are there stuff we can't use? Could that go somewhere else? Could it be used at a training academy or something?
There really isn't too much, Rich, that falls into that category. We have a lot of stuff that's been accumulated over a number of years. Older hose, couplings, and stuff like that you don't want to throw them away, but realistically, we're never going to use them, and really no one can use them. So we'll be getting rid of stuff like that. But it is definitely something, Rich, that we'll keep an eye on. If there is stuff that we're not going to use, we can certainly, put it out there to area departments, especially the call volunteer type departments that might need stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Bishop, any questions on the fire budget?
No, I don't.
Okay, Mr. Christian.
Oh, there we go. Hey, good evening, Chief. Thank you for all that information that you sent out to us. It was an interesting read, and with reading that and a couple of questions I asked Rich, I'm pretty good with you today. So thank you so much, and I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Asdavorian.
Hi, Chief. Just a couple of quick questions. So your overtime budget came down because you're going up to 13 officers, but I noticed in your narrative, you're looking to add additional overtime so you can get a second ambulance running full time. That cut in overtime, was that, and obviously I'm probably directing this to Richard. So Richard, would that have helped kept the ambulance going?
It would have, in the cut in the overtime. Last year, we increased overtime. I think it was around, it might have been $75,000, I forget, for the new recruits that were coming on. And because they're in the academy, we needed to have additional overtime for that. But we knew going into this year, we would bring that overtime back. The hope is if revenues look good in August, when we close the books, if state aid holds where the governor has it, which is a good size increase, my hope is to provide additional funding for the second ambulance. The chief is going through an exercise right now to determine if he needs, is overtime the best way to do it? Is manpower the best way to do it? And hopefully over the next couple of months, we can shake that out. And if funding becomes available between now and the end of this budget process, we may be able to put money into it.
do we have a ballpark of how much it would cost incrementally to keep a second ambulance going?
If we were going to keep it year round, the 5 days a week, which we do now, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we're utilizing state money to, we did use it. Right now, we're not because we're down so many guys because of the fire academy. You're looking at between $300,000, $325,000 that would have to be added to cover that cost.
Above and beyond any grants?
Correct. So we're hoping that the state steps up and continues to give us money for our responses to the state hospital. And each year we've done that. We've used the majority of that money. Previous years we used some on equipment, but this fiscal year here I made the decision to use it all for getting the second ambulance in service.
Gotcha.
So for the past, for calendar year 21, we had the ambulance in service for 120 days, which is almost 24 weeks. So we got about another $39,000 left in the grant money. So I'm going to sit down with the town manager and find out when's the best time to start utilizing that towards A2 again.
Okay, and some of that cost also translates into revenue, is that correct?
It does. So when we don't have to call a mutual aid ambulance in, then we keep that revenue in town. If a mutual aid ambulance comes in to take one of our patients, they keep the revenue at that point.
Gotcha. And I guess a similar question on the training and staff development.
Mm-hmm.
How much would you be looking for, Chief, for the new firefighters?
Honestly,
Mentally to what you have in your budget now.
So I guess realistically, I'd be probably looking for another maybe $40,000. So the point of that was, right now when we have members on duty and we train, and we get a call, for the most part we drop what the training and go to the call. One of the things I have implemented once we started with the new training officer July 1st is we do take companies out of service, but where we only have 3 engine companies in town, if something more serious happens or more than 2 calls come in, they have to come back in service. So if I got that money, I'd be looking to hire guys back on overtime so the on-duty crew could actually train without any interruptions.
Right.
So it honestly, David, it's kind of like, you know, a future plan that I have as a new chief of what I'd like to see happen, whether it happens in FY23 or 24 or 25. But with our new training officer in place, I think it's something that will be very useful for the members of the department. I
can definitely see that. And the only other question I have is around vehicles. Mm-hmm. Is there any? I was looking at your vehicle list. Thank you for all the detail on that. Is there anything on there that concerns you right now that you think we ought to be thinking about as a finance committee and helping towards, if money becomes available?
Yeah, I've had this discussion with Mr. Montori, and you know, in my capital budget, I have put in for a new engine for this coming fiscal year. So 2 of the engines that we have were purchased from Texas, and they were purchased used. The reason for that was we had a very unique situation where the frames of 2 engines back in 2000, I think it was 2010 or 11, broke. So we needed the immediate placements. So Chief Hazel at the time made the decision to purchase these 2 engines. The problem with these 2 engines is they were the first generation of the new regen, I guess, law that the EPA put in, which causes a number of issues with us having to maintain these engines. The cost of it is quite substantial. So, you know, in FY23, I put in for a new engine. And I've had discussions with Mr. Montori, possibly maybe 3 years later, asking for another engine. You know, which is unusual to ask for that many engines at one time. But between those 2 engines and engine 3, which is only 2 years younger than those 2 engines, we really were in a situation that 3 engines were almost the same age as each other. So, you know, that's the plan. Hopefully we can succeed. The only other issue that we're going to run into is the lead time these engines. So even if we get it approved in May, we might not see a new engine until a year from that, if not more. They're talking up to 18 months lead time on some of these engines.
Just to follow up on that, I'll be presenting the capital budget tomorrow night to the Board of Selectmen, and the FinCom will be reviewing it in a few weeks. The fire engine will be one of the items we're bringing forward to be transferred out of the stabilization fund to fund, as well as, other equipment for vehicles for other departments. And as Joe mentioned, not only is there a major need for the vehicle, but as he also mentioned, the lead time is so long. We just don't want to wait, another town meeting and then 18 months from then. So we'll be bringing a fair amount of vehicles forward to get them in the queue. But the fire engine's top priority.
Well, you answered my last question. I was going to say, how is it going to be funded? So that's great.
I know you too well, Dave.
Chief, thank you very much for what you and your department do.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Okay, on to Mr. Russo.
Yeah, actually, I had a couple questions, but they actually were already answered. So I'm gonna pass on any additional questions at this time. I appreciate all the information, and good luck in the transition to the new fire station.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. My questions got answered as well. So thank you for all the info you provided, and thanks for presenting your budget.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
I
Rich
had
always has a final question. Go ahead.
It's on the Excel spreadsheet you sent out about where we transport to. Saints versus Lowell General versus Leahy versus Winchester.
Yep.
You talked about we'll be seeing an increase in transports to Leahy. Is that because Leahy is expanding?
I believe so, Rich. As you saw on the numbers I sent you, it's already started to increase. So with Leahy expanding, and also, like I mentioned, they became a level 1 trauma center at this point. So if we have any serious traumas, whereas before we might have called for med flight, we have transported by ground over to Leahy Clinic and have them with the trauma patients. Mainly the biggest chunk of that is the fact that with Leahy expanding, more people would like to go there. Now, one of the things that I want to make clear on that is we're required to take the patient to the closest available facility. So if the patient is not stable, we have to go to the closest facility, which a lot of times is Saints up in Lowell. And some people get upset by that, but until, a lot of times we'll meet the paramedics en route and they can stabilize the patient and take them to Leahy Clinic. But sometimes we have no choice.
I noticed the difference, huge difference between Saints and Lowell General.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just based on the assessment of the patient.
Correct.
Okay.
And some patients would rather, even though they're under the same umbrella, some patients would pick Lowell General over Saints or Saints over Lowell General. It's just, but if they're stable enough, we'll either take them into Saints, Memorial, Lowell General, Leahy, or Winchester.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks again. Thanks for all you guys do.
You're very welcome.
All right, I think we're all
One
set.
more
Thanks.
thing, Mr. Chairman.
One more.
I just want to get this on the record. Chief, I'm very jealous of your new firehouse. If you see how my beautiful city of Lowell looks, I'm very happy for you. It's nice to see some towns really getting their budgets together and taking advantage of taking care of firefighters. So I'm very happy for you, Chief.
Thank you.
Looks very nice, and I'll go back to my hole in Lowell.
I know we were supposed to have a time last week or the week before.
Yeah.
For a tour. So
I was on shift, but I'll get with you and Richard. And
just let Mr. Montori know, and I'll be more than glad to bring any one of you over there and show you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Have a good night.
Too. Okay.
Telemedia?
Yes, Brian, welcome. Oh, let me switch the screen
How's it
here.
going, everyone? Just let me know if you notice any bandwidth issues with me, maybe because hosting and presenting. Just let me know. It might be fine, but if it is, I can make some adjustments.
All right.
All right, so we have some changes in the salaries, grade up, step upgrades. There are a few other changes, minor changes. I can go through those one at a time. Repairs and maintenance, one of the things we realized is, the van is kind of new and we really haven't used as much gas as we thought we would. We really only use it for carrying a lot of equipment when we have big shoots at the schools, various places around town. So I think that we can easily cut that for sure. Can move on to leases and contracts. This is another thing that's actually, pretty good with where we're going. We need less virtual licenses. A lot of that's is because we have more in-person meetings, but also because when we migrated to Office, that now has Teams included. So we really don't need too many WebEx. Jason and I are going to keep them because it's just a better streaming quality for us. But in terms of licenses for other people, which we were using, so people didn't really have to meet in person, the fact that there's Teams there is great, and we can reduce that. The other change in leases and contracts is we installed a system at the high school about 2 years ago. And the first 2 years are usually free in terms of coverage and upgrades and things like that. It's optional thereafter, and we want to have it for this year. It does get more expensive the older the machine gets, and that's one of the decisions we're going to have to make in the future, whether we still think it's worth it, the software updates. But I definitely think since it's a newer system, it's definitely good to have in the beginning for sure. Professional services, you'll notice that there is an increase, but that was because we moved the professional liability insurance into a different line item. So that used to be, someplace else under insurance, but we moved it there. And professional liability insurance, we're actually required to have per our contract. It just covers us in case of liable and anybody decides to sue us or something for any copyright issues. So that's standard and something, like I said, we have to have. Communications, that changed because we have, first of all, I want to thank Jamie Bent and Stephen Pafalo, who's the network engineer at the high school. They've done an amazing job setting us up with a VLAN infrastructure that goes all throughout the schools. We have drops. We have probably about 15 drops that Stephen put in for us. And we also have it set up where we can stream at the library. And we're working on setting up with the COA as well. So we don't think that we need the live streaming hotspots that we were going to get, because most of the places where we do live shoots, we have a much better connection to begin with because it's a dedicated VLAN network. We don't have to worry about any bandwidth issues or anything like that. It's just a straight pipeline. So I'd really like to thank those two for helping us and saving us money. The other thing is you're not gonna, there's no capital item in this budget. But Rich, I believe you're gonna present that separately.
Yeah, again, tomorrow night, when I present the capital budget, part of Telemedia's capital budget that will be requested at town meeting and paid for through the franchise fees that we receive from Verizon and Comcast will be for for an upgrade to the town hall video system.
Yeah, that's a project we're really excited about. We're going to do the video system and the audio system as well, but we're also going to improve the sound quality for in-person attendance. Sometimes, we've gotten comments that it's harder for people to hear, and that's sort of because the way that the speakers are placed. So we're going to add more speakers, make it more surround sound. And if you've noticed in being in that room, whenever there's a PowerPoint presentation, the board members have to like turn their heads. So not like they have these really cool interactive tablets where they'll display, everything that's on the laptop right in front of them, and they won't have to turn their heads. And there's a lot of really cool other technology involved. They can control the lights and various things like that. So we really want to make it not just an improvement for broadcast, although that is the number one goal. We just want to have it more functional for the residents and the board members themselves. And we're currently working with a consultant to try to price that out and get the most accurate pricing. One of the big issues, and I'm sure, this goes for everything, but the supply chain issue is really affecting the technology business big time in terms of hardware. We've tried to put in orders for, certain microphones, and we've, been having we can't even get that particular product. So we have to go with separate brands. And it's really, really affecting technology. So there's still a lot up in the air in terms of what exactly we're going to get, but we have a pretty good idea of what the cost will be. It's just a matter of putting everything together to get that project done. And we'd like to do that first quarter the next fiscal year.
And the cost of the project's $229,500, and we'll be able to fund it again within the revenue we receive from Comcast and Verizon.
Yep, absolutely. And I just want to add one more thing. We will be upgrading the smaller meeting room as well. So adding an extra camera. I don't know if you've ever seen meetings from there. There's only 2 cameras, and one of them is actually blocked by a projector. So it looks like all of our meetings are sponsored by Epson. So we're going to fix that. And we think it's going to be an overall benefit to the community, viewing wise at home and in person. So those are pretty much the changes that I have. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, we'll go around to Mr. Lassier. Dramatic pause.
Rich, I think you're on
I
mute.
was muted. I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bishop?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Christian?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Asnavorian?
Same here, no questions.
Oh, striking out, Brian. Mr. Russo?
Depends on how you look.
Get on early.
Depends on how you look at it, but I'm going to also say no question as well. I appreciate the analysis here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't really have any questions either. The smaller room you're talking about, is that the one we normally meet in, Richard?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Brian. That was,
All right, you let me off easy today.
easy night for you.
You've had a tough COVID, Brian. You had a tough COVID.
We have a tough COVID, and we're gonna hope that we can get back to all in person very soon, so we can see you guys in person.
Here, here.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thanks. So what do we have? Street lights left?
Street lights.
Yes, exciting. Here we go. Street lights. I think this is it. Yep. Here we are.
Yep. So the big change to streetlights, it's pretty straightforward. Over the last couple of years, we bought all of the streetlights from National Grid, and we converted them over to LED. We had a short-term bond to help pay for it, and we were going to pay that short-term borrowing over a few years based on the savings we were going to have in the electricity from going to LED. We paid the bond off sooner than we anticipated, so there's no more bond anticipation note paydowns. And now we are strictly paying for the the street light electricity and being on the pole of National Grid or whoever's pole it is. And we've reduced our cost. We're projecting it to be $72,750 dollars a year. This is our first full year under the LEDs without any other costs. So we hope we're accurate in our projection, but we've definitely seen a decrease. But as you can see, it's been a big savings.
Yeah, that's great. Mr. Lossier.
That's an unbelievable savings. National Grid is still responsible for fixing them though, right?
No, part of this budget is we contract with a third party to fix any damaged lights themselves. So if the arm or the light needs to be replaced, we have a contract with someone. But because of the nature of an LED light, the need to replace a bulb is very rare. So we have a company out of Rhode Island that we contract with.
So who would a resident call if the street light went out?
They call us, and we would have this company go replace it.
Because I know they used to calling National Grid.
Yeah, nope, they can work directly through us now, and it's a lot faster response. We also have the ability under the new street lights, we pay for a software that allows us to dim the lights or increase the illumination in certain areas depending on what we need.
Okay.
Can you do that? Can you report that light thing right through the website, town website?
Yes.
Yeah.
We haven't had the need to. If you want, we can practice in front of your house. We can increase and decrease the illumination.
That's all right.
Let us know.
All right. Is that good, Rich?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bishop?
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Christian?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Asomorian?
Just one. Richard, if a overly happy motorist takes out a street light, does that contract also cover that replacement as well as just the lights itself?
So Verizon always would take care of the National Grid would take care of the pole, and then we're responsible for the light.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Russo?
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yep, I do not either. So that does it for the budgets. You have anything else for us, Richard?
No, just that I'll be presenting the enterprise funds and the capital budget tomorrow night. Rates will not be increasing for any of the enterprise funds for FY23. We'll have a healthy and robust capital improvement plan going into FY23, with the major priority being the new DPW/school maintenance facility.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my video just completely froze, but as long as you can hear me, I guess. All right, so moving on to committee reports. Tom's not here. He covers two of them. Economic development?
Nope.
Nope. Or bylaw?
Nope.
Okay. No timesheets or meeting minutes. We don't have a meeting next week. Next meeting will be in 2 weeks. I think it's DPW, and I'm going to make that for an in-person at the town hall. But there will be a WebEx option for anybody that wants to do it that way.
Just let me know. We'll set the link up.
Okay.
Rob, are you doing it on the original schedule? It was March 7th, so it's going to move up a week to the week prior, February 28th now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot the 28th. I missed that date completely.
Yeah. I think do you want me to send out another schedule, Rich? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, if it's been updated, that would be helpful. I appreciate it.
I will try to remember to do that.
No problem.
I'll do that. I'll do that tonight, Rob.
Oh, okay.
Doing it right now.
And that's the only one that's left is DPW?
School, DPW, then the schools.
Schools, Shawshing Tech. Did you hear anything from Shawshing Tech?
I just received word this past week that we're going to meet in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Boy, they keep pushing it off.
All right, unless anybody has anything else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion to
moved.
adjourn.
Dave with a motion and Rich
Second.
with a second. Roll call vote, Mr. Lavasier,
Aye.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Mr. Christian,
Aye.
Mr. Asnavorian,
Aye.
Mr. Russo,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent.
Good
Thanks,
Thank you.
Good night, guys.